businesses and in our government organizations, because you find that staff sets the culture, which becomes that persona. When that HR practitioner or the company's leaders now want to come in and say, listen, based on our policies, procedures, this is what should happen. Because that culture, which sometimes is negative, takes over, that makes their job that much more difficult to do. So that HR practitioner has to, from the get-go, they have to ensure that policies and procedures are being outlined and set. There are not a lot of companies in Jamaica that focus on culture, organizational culture. There are some of the larger, the banks, etc., that have a cultural ambassador. But I'm one of those people who believe that it must be focused on as well, because that now will also help those practitioners who have to execute on behalf of the company. It makes their job that much more simple. And having to make their decisions, sometimes the staff can make the decisions themselves because they know exactly what those standards are going to be or not going to be. One of the things I'd like to throw to the panelists, if I'm not allowed, when you speak about impartiality, I see it come up a lot, is dress code. Sometimes, particularly for the females, you speak about the length of the skirt. And, I've seen so many instances where somebody a little bit more slender might wear the skirt a little shorter and it's not an issue. And then some of us as Jamaicans, a little bit more curvaceous, come with the same length. And then HR has issues, I think, particularly in call centers. I've had to lead teams of 500 with issues like that. And how do you balance those type of issues? Because they're on paper, but when you have to execute it, it becomes so much. It's very different when you actually are on the ground and have to execute. So comments and food for thought simultaneously.
Indeed, Dr. Ashley. Thank you for touching on the impartiality point. And yes, definitely one of the more touchier issues when it comes to looking at your candidates, looking at your workforce. So Dr. Ashley, you were all right to throw that out. So I suggest the comments and feedback are welcome.
And you are correct, Dr. Ashley. I mean, you're not in HR, but you have laid it out very, very clear, and that is basically what is happening in the workspace. And the truth of the matter is, as one of the things I find, among my team as practitioners, is that one have to always be looking at the policies and procedures and update them accordingly. Because the truth of the matter, there are some things that would work 15, 20, 30 years ago. But today, to come in an office space, and even now when you look at the whole work from home, that we were always kind of nudging a little bit, and that has taken off so much, because there was a point where we thought that, once you talk about work from home, you're going to be on holidays and no work is going to be done. And now there are many research coming out that speaking about the productivity and what it is, how we measure productivity versus in an office space and working from home. So as I said, in terms of looking at the policies and ensuring that they're updated and relevant to the time, if it is how much inches, from the ankle up, it must be clear whether you're tall, whether you're short, whether you're fat, whether you're skinny, whatever it is. And so it have to be well built out. When you're talking about your hair and hair color, now most workers are having the shocking burgundy and the blonde and I mean, when the policies are written here, say about that's not in there, but they said it is natural. Somebody can born with a blonde hair. And then as HR practitioner, you're running up and down and jumping. I said, but I never thought of that. The fancy different brand name slippers are being worn and sandals. And so one of the things I actually do in my space is that I actually not only have the policy, but take pictures, having practical pictures in the policy. So you see, when we say no sneakers, this is the X, but not this time, not this time, not this time. When you talk about standards, so it's clear. When you talk about pants, what with the stripes and with the water. So we have to be very clear, and we have to be also, even as practitioners, be open for the change, because it's here. And once it's not compromising the business and lowering the standard of your brand, then I think as practitioner, the 15, 20, 30 years of all of that is just changing.
That is very, very true and very relevant to our time, because as mentioned, and it may not have been mentioned explicitly or directly, but times are changing. So some things that were used to be the standard, quote unquote, are redundant or being thrown out or are being revised or have been just completely thrown out the window. And, it's the same with fashion as well. Some trends that were 10, 20, 30, 90 years ago are coming back. So therefore we see that fashion is that word cyclical, fashion is a cycle. So we can even see that in the HR space. So, as Ms. Anderson pointed out, HR practitioners who may be in the field for 30, 50 odd years, they're used to the structure, they're used to the rigidity of things, they're used to the traditions. And then when they now see, a pink hair or a blue hair or the spiky boot, those sorts of things, they're like, they're like, whoa, can't handle this, So, just to throw that out there, hey, things are changing, times are changing, so it's either we get with it or we just remain stagnant to it. But is there any way for HR practitioners to remain stagnant or to, for want of better terms, stand up in the storm, quote unquote,
It's HR has changed. It's and changing. The old way of doing things is done with. As you can see, my hair is blonde. I'm also in the capacity where I review and make changes to the company's policies. Every single policy is done by the division that I manage. So it's so important to also be a part of international HR bodies, because you get to learn so much about things that affect the profession in other geographies. So it helps you to really look on things on a broader scope, where that way you can affect change in your own company. The old way of doing things is whatever. I think this pandemic really pushed us in our thinking and in our way of doing things. Who would have thought that 80-90% of the workforce is able to work from home? Who would have thought? And the pandemic certainly proved that a lot of what we do at the office can be done right by your table at home. So, when we view things and talking about the little things, and hold it in such high regard when really and truly really don't matter. I think even though there is an importance of company branding and culture that that has been pointed out by Dr. Ashley, it's very important that the custodians of these policies and the leadership of a company have in place a very strong company culture that is embedded from the leadership right now. Because the thing is, if the leadership don't believe in it, there is no way they can affect the change that they want to see in their people. And in my experience, consulting for other companies, I have realized that, and doing a lot of training to other companies as well, you come across different cultures. And then sometimes the culture itself can be that hindrance to a company being operational at its optimum. Sometimes you have people who are very creative and actually can bring another side of the business, where you can actually make some serious money. But because of our thinking and our archaic way of doing things, they're like, no, the company don't need that. And then here comes COVID. And we're like, oh, so it can be done. So, it's all about bringing ourselves to a higher level of consciousness. We can't be thinking the same way as we did before 2020. We have to be thinking of new and creative ways and meeting people at their needs to ensure that they perform at the highest level. So it all comes down to the way we think and the way in which we manage people. It's not about setting out whatever it is that is needed to be done. It's about guiding people, ensuring that, it is done in a way in which brings about job enrichment. When people are happy doing their job, you get the best out of them. So, and that all ties into the company culture in which it's fostered. And it's also important for us as HR practitioners who are, if our specialty is in recruiting, to ensure that what are we hiring for? Is it a job fit or company culture fit? We have to think about those things because sometimes we hire people who are competent at doing their job, but will they fit into the culture? And then there are persons, who, come with all sorts of things, but would they be a right fit for the job? We see people who say, oh, I'm in HR, and I'm telling you, I've come across quite a few practitioners who say they are practitioners, and really and truly, having a conversation with them, this is not where they belong. And it is so crazy. And people think, oh yeah, I'm an HR practitioner, I love HR. Maybe not. Maybe on paper that's what you think you should be doing. But when you really check it out, you'll see where your strength and passion really lies. It's really important that a culture is a good foundation, because all sorts of things can come and influence and shift it in a negative way. So we as HR practitioners, we really have to change the narrative about these things. And, going back to the old point of being impartial, comes back to making some very tough decisions. I tell people all the time, you're not required to be friends with your coworkers or your colleagues. It's not a requirement. But the requirement is that you have to be professional and respectful with people. Now, if you so happen to have, this person be your bestie, or in some cases might end up being a wife or your husband, that's an add-on. But the idea here is to ensure that people are doing what is required and ensure that the civility and respect and the professionalism is embedded in the culture, and let people know to understand. Again, come to my very favorite word, compartmentalizing, very important. So, just those things, you can't be doing something for Jane and not doing it for Joe. It's everything has to be straight across the board for everybody. I recall some years ago in my profession where one of our managers did something that our staff was terminated for. And being the custodian of the policy, I was like, yeah, gotta let it go, because here's the thing. You can't be at that level and expecting for you to do the same thing that a normal staff is doing and expect to get away with it. It doesn't look well on the leadership. It doesn't look well on the expectation that we have of everybody else. And then you don't want other staff members to lose trust in the leadership. You have to be very cognizant of those things, because people are always watching. So you can't be playing favoritism. It's not a good look. So, just hanging on to what Dr. Ashley said, but I'm in total agreement. We can't be, doing this for one person and doing something else to somebody else, and not setting that culture that people say, okay, this is what it is about. And when people are on the outside looking in, you know, you want to have that uniqueness about the company that say, you know what, that is a culture I like. Versus, you know, people always be saying things about companies, but you want to ensure that at least for the culture, it's something that is being, you know, praised about. So, yeah.
Okay, can I just add on to what Yutan has said and other panel members? It's actually very critical to note the environment or to be aware of the environment that you operate within. What I'm actually speaking of is the union versus non-unionized environment, private sector versus public sector, right? Because you know, within the government sector, the very bureaucratic structure that is there. I mean, you want to implement change, but you have to go through so many different levels to get an approval. So whilst we know in HR that this is what we are trying to implement, sometimes we have to talk to this one to get the buy-in, especially if it's a union benefit we're talking about, right? We're thinking, yes, management wants one thing, the union wants something else. So it can become hostile at times. So it's not like HR is over there saying, this is a policy and we're sticking to the policy. The union is also there as the onlooker and saying, but this has happened in the past. Why don't we do it a different way? So sometimes you have to consult, right? It's consult with your union members and also with your staff members who you actually lead. So sometimes it's very hard, as you say, impartiality. Yes, it has happened before. And usually they come back to HR and say, but if you did it for one person, why you can't do it for the other person? And then we get caught out to say, well, we're sticking to the rules. And it don't always work out that way. So as I said, it depends the environment that you're working in. The union is always going to bring up a situation to say, but it happened over there, so we want it for this particular employee. You know, so it's not so easy at times to just strike up a firm decision and say, this, we're not being impartial and this is how it is and this is a policy and we're sticking to it. So sometimes you might have to, you know, not suspend the rules, but precedent has been set, the error happened and it's, you know, in your face. So what are you going to do? Right, so and then it's, as you rightfully say, they always blame HR. So how comes HR made that happen in the first place? You know, so it's hard. It's hard.
That's true. And you hear the double standard that is being spoken of so openly. And the truth of the matter, sometimes as practitioners, there is so much that we cannot say. Even though sometimes the situations seem to be identical, they are sometimes not always identical on the face of it. And so it is certainly a challenge from time to time.
And then sometimes HR is blamed because staff don't see HR as humans. You are only HR. You are there to facilitate an end result for them. And then there is a personal maturity, a level of emotional intelligence that sometimes is not screened for you to become an HR professional. But if you don't have that level of emotional intelligence, that job is tough.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you managing as you are going through that roller coaster? Because the staff is pulling you one way, the union has something different. Your boss up the top has something very, very different. You know,
something different.
all of it. That level of emotional intelligence that you need as an HR practitioner is significantly high. I would even say higher than a lot of the other areas. And I mean, I've looked at so much training that they do for companies, and that is not necessarily an area that you're continuously coached and recoached and trained and retrained in. You know, when you're the sales, they train you how to take rejection, they train you how to manage the emotions, you know, you do all these different areas. It's not a heavy area of emphasis. But, you know, when you all go home in the night, as you're saying, Uton, you need to compartmentalize, right? You're like,
really?
yeah.
That is correct. And one of the things I tell you, because of my years of experience in this particular role, is that when you are affiliated with an organization that understands the role of HR, and if you notice, I started off talking about HR as a business partner, then it many times makes it much easier. Not that you won't have the challenges, not that, I mean, the stress and all of that won't add it from time to time, but understanding HR as a business partner to make the strategic decision and to be seen as a part of the whole strategy that is being set as the objective, etc., for the business, it helps a lot. And so the voice of HR in those arenas speaks volume and speaks loud. So even if it is the chairman, the director, you are sitting at the table, not only at the executive management table, but when you are having a voice and a say in the directors meeting in which I have been a part of, it makes it better, because at the same time you are able to sit at that table and you're able to expound on matters from the background of a HR, and then it brings a lot of clarity and a lot of buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that was quite a bit. Anything to add, Anicia, Shelly Gay, anything to add?
Well, Matthew, I would just like to add, in terms of HR being open to in these times really needing to be adaptable and changing, is that, well, the nature of the workforce is changing in terms of the generations that are in the workforce. So millennials have different needs compared to the Generation X. And so it's very important for HR to adapt to those. So compensation is not the only thing that, people care about now. And although COVID has forced us to really take on this work from home, remote working, in terms of flexibility in jobs now, persons are more output focused. So it's all about delivering their deliverables, and they're not necessarily quite concerned with other issues. So definitely, HR has to be adaptable at this time and moving forward. And also, when Sherilyn spoke about certain areas that aren't trained on, such as controlling the emotions from an HR perspective and handling objections, it actually made me smile, because those are some of the areas we assess for salespersons. So that was very interesting. Yes.
Very interesting there. All right. Anything to add, Shelly Gay, before we move on?
I have nothing to add at this point. Listen, I am not an HR practitioner as these wonderful people are, but let me tell you, I'm learning so many things here. I mean, a lot of things that we take for granted, even me as an employer and as an employee where I work, there is a lot of value and things that I would take for granted. But from what I'm hearing, HR really is the heart of any organization, and people take that for granted. There are just so many veins and arteries from HR that go into the various offices within an organization. There's a lot to do. So students, there's a lot to learn, but the skills and the skills, competencies that are required to effectively perform a job in the HR office are skills that you can learn on the job, and skills that you can even learn while at school. Take advantage. And my advice, see how best, if this is an area of interest for you, find someone within that area that you could shadow for some time, so you can get some hands-on experience into the field of HR, and then, perhaps higher education as well, so you can become specialists in the area. My 2 pence.
And just before you close out on this segment, Matthew, I look at HR as the gatekeeper. I'm not sure if my other panelists would agree with me.
I totally agree.
as the gatekeeper. We stand at the gate, we trying to attract the best person coming by, passing by, want to stop by, allowing them to come in, giving them that experience. And even when they are leaving to also, though we are separating, we want to be able to wish you all the best, irrespective of what the reason is, whether it's a termination, somebody migrating, etc., or just going on to new venture. So that experience as a gatekeeper.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things that I'd love to add is, we more talk about just HR, because as you move on, you look on it as more talent management, and there's some companies who don't have to do that wide scope that you have, but you have recruiters who are different from the retention specialists, etc. So I'm showing our age a little bit, because because things change, as we're saying with COVID, with times we're in 2021, and as you're looking at careers, there might be certain talents or certain competencies that you're displaying. You might be weak in one area, but dependent on the company that you go, perhaps what your job is the recruiter, or maybe there's somebody else who is doing retention, etc. Utah, I don't know if with your organization, because you're in a call center, you probably have different roles within your area. Yes? Okay. Yes.
And that's why it's important to have a generalist background.
Yes.
You understand, and you would have undergone the gamut of everything HR. You have been exposed to everything. So
and
throw me anywhere.
It helps. And even your background before if it is that you came from, you were doing other things before you venture into HR, because for me, like sales, marketing, all of those, it adds value, because the fact that I did a little marketing, the fact that I did a little sales, I brand HR as marketing. So I use all that kind of skill set. So for the students who are listening in, I mean, you may be, skilled in a particular area, but when you get into that space now that you're now, feeling the passion, all the areas that you were before, involved in and doing, don't shut the door to them. Bring them into the scope and use them to your advantage, because public relations, I'm enjoying what I do. I mean, for public relation, I see an article, I can say if it makes sense, I can say what the tagline, even if I'm communicating to my internal staff and even externally, and the marketing aspect, it works brand, because I set up different things as relates to branding HR. What is it when you think of HR? What do I want my team members to think about HR? So all of those talents and gifts, put them to use. Nothing is wasted in your career space. Even if it was a project you were working on as a team member, you were the team leader, you worked as internship in different spaces and different places. Put all of those experiences together and use them for your advantage.
Very, very well said there, Ms. Anderson. So it sounds like part of what HR would have to do is to, as you'd put it, brand the company. So and I like that I'm getting your passion, and as you said, utilizing your exposure to other things from before into what you're doing now. That is really, really good there. I just want to pick up on something that Mr. Vessel had said earlier. I think it was when he mentioned job fit versus culture fit. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Bignell Cuff, I think you may have mentioned it or touched on it in your presentation in semester 1 too. So I would like us just a little bit to talk about that job fit versus culture fit, because I think I remember even in the first launching of this panel, I believe, yes, that was where I learned it from, when Mr. Vassal brought it up. So let's talk about that a little bit. Job fit versus culture fit. What's the difference? Are they similar? What are the nuances involved with these two terms?
I'll allow one of the ladies to go first.
Very generous of you.
when you talk about job fit, you basically looking at based on the job description, the scope of the job that is at hand to be done. So you're thinking of, oh, this person needs to have how many years of experience, what's the qualification that makes them okay, the best fit person for the job. But a lot of times you may have somebody as it relates to culture fit now that has all of that. But based on the culture, and remember we talk about culture, sometimes we say the culture is unspoken. It is just what we do. Sometimes it's not even what is the objective and what is the mission and the vision that is there on the wall. It is who we are. Is it that we have our open door policy? Is it that we speak to a person in a particular way? Is it this is how we address matters? It's just the tone of the business. And really and truly, the tone needs to be set from the top as relates, especially if it is from an objective standpoint, where it is the company wants to go and how it is that the company wants to be seen, not only internal, but external in particular. When somebody talk about your organization, what is the takeaway you want for them to take away from all of that? So when you talk about the culture now, so the person with this right skill set, maybe just for the experience is good. But when you talk about the culture, is this person an aggressive person? Is that they talk loud? Is it that, sometimes you're interviewing person and when they come into the space, you can say, this just by the body language and the response, it just tells you, a lot about who this person is and how will this person fit with our culture. And so if it is a culture that you want to reshape, you might need to take that person in. If it is a culture that is standing strong and you want to build on it, then certainly you're going to think twice before you say, okay, it's not just a qualification and a right skill set. That is why I'm taking this person. It's for the next 5 year, 10 year, for this particular department. It might be a marketing department. You probably restructuring, and Dr. Actually would know this in detail when you're called in to say, I'm HR calling you, I'm saying, oh, Dr. Ashley, help here. We're not going in the right direction. Whatever it costs, I'm gonna pay it, right? And then she now will have to come in and say, you're restructuring this department. This is the tone of the marketing department. Is this where we want to go? And now you analyze, make an assessment and say, this is what you should be looking for. So basically that's it in a nutshell.
And I'd love to jump in and just talk a little bit more. We look at job fit, culture fit, but a lot of companies are now looking at competency. And the more we start looking at competency, the more we can now encompass both of them together. Because the competency is going to, yes, look on the years of experience, it looks at your qualification, but now it's going to start looking on things like job attitude. It's going to look on values and beliefs. It does inculcate that cultural fit. What are the needs of the organization? Because the company has set the tone for what they want. And in interviewing, the interview no longer is as simplistic as, hi, how are you? My name is Charlene Ashley. I went to this school no, they can read that on the resume. Exactly. Now when you're being interviewed, they're now doing the initial assessment to see, okay, well, does this person actually have the competencies that we know we need for our organization? And in the competencies is where you will speak to a number of the issues that may come up as you talk about culture, right? And whether the culture is right or whether you're going through a cultural shift. And it's something that I really invite you as the students need to start now reading up what people mean when they say competency, right? Jackie spoke a little earlier about government and, the unions and what you can and cannot do. And it's very interesting as even the government now is trying to introduce competencies as they are restructuring their entire entity, looking towards how they can perform. But people don't understand what we're talking about. So I would tend to say you go just one step a little higher and say, yes, you need a job fit because then it's not the right person, but you have to make sure that that person who has the skills, the years of experience, the qualification, all of those things, they will be the correct cultural fit. So I would tend to say that one should not negate the other. Sometimes employers like myself, we get very irritated with HR because why you're taking so long? Whole heap of people want job and why you can't find me somebody, right? Why are you taking so long? And I'm sure, Anicia, you end up with that kind of situation.
All the time.
Why are you taking so long? So many people want a job, but you see, now HR has that job to make sure that it's not just one box they're ticking. They gotta tick all those boxes for the company because the company in the future they're going to be prosperous.
And just add on to that, you also have to balance as well, because you don't want a discrimination issue arising that you're saying you're only picking people that fit into your so-called culture, because we know that there's the boys club and there's other issues. Right. So we have to be careful that we're not just putting people that fit into our culture. We also embrace diversity. Yeah. So those are some of the issues.
Competency model would have spoken to that. Your competency
right.
All of those things. Because remember, now you're talking about, you were talking about whether other people are, again, every company is looking for something different, but you're talking about sometimes basic things like respect. You're talking about things like whether they deliver on time, how do they communicate, do they cause offense? Competencies now, remember, you're talking about a lot of the softer skills.
Softer skills, right.
Very difficult. People would have told you it's impossible to measure.
Right. So it's not just about technical competence. You have to. Right. Yeah. Correct. I agree.
Okay, I wanted to jump in and talk about competency, and that's really, a big part of our recruiting framework. And generally, it's our experience that, HR is always in a situation where obviously management needs you to take on staff. So it's always a system of, trying to get that recruiting process over with. And it almost seems like there is not enough time to really get it right. And so, for example, with our framework, the initial layer is really identifying who that ideal candidate, and in my case, all the time, it's sales candidate, who the ideal sales candidate is. And then we start off using a competency-based assessment for the skill sets, but obviously it does not stop there. You then start to look at the experience, you start to look at just how they handle themselves on the phone. You take it all the way down. And of course, they have to be a cultural fit for longevity, because turnover has become one of the major issues now that a lot of companies are facing. So it's very important to have not just the job fit, but the cultural fit, so that you can have longevity in the roles.
I'm glad competency was mentioned. Because if I'm hiring, your accolades and years of experience means nothing to me.
Exactly.
Nothing to me. Because I've seen time over time, people come with all these accolades and experience and can't do it. Nothing. It's just something behind their name. And if push come to shove, make no sense. So, it's very important, you find people who are competent. Like, you have somebody doing the same job for years and just really don't make no sense. And I think I was before my time, because I remember my very first job. I was just an HR admin at the time. And one of the supervisors in a bank that I used to work. So I think I was in charge of an aspect of a process. And it just so happened when I was doing my job rotation, job enrichment situation, and I saw a lot of shortcomings. And I respectfully said, so you've been doing this job for quite some time. Marky, I was very outspoken. And again, I believe I was probably before my time. And I said, yeah, I don't think you're competent at this. I think we probably need to speak to the L&D department to get some things done, because you are dropping too many balls here. And she escalated me to my manager. And I was very resolute. I did not change my views. And I said, this is what it is. And when I outlined all of the stuff, her manager came back and apologized to me, because she got so upset. And I was like, yeah. But the thing about being also in HR, you have to tell people the truth. Some might not take it well, some might take it very well, but at the end of the day, comes back to the point of being impartial. It's not a friend and company thing. It's looking on what the objectives are. And the purpose of HR is to be on the side of right. It's not to be on he say or she side. It's about being on the side of right and being objective 100% of the time. So, you know, competence is really important. Not because I like you, I'm going to give you the job and say you're going to be here, then things go south. No. So I'm going to tell you what your shortcomings are. It's up to you to work on them or not. But until you do, you are not going to be confirmed in that position until you have proven that you are competent enough to get that position. So it's more than just what you bring to the table. And that is why it's so important for people to, you know, really work on your craft. If this is something that you want to do, you have to ensure that you are doing the necessary things to add value to your career, whichever area it is. And if it is going to be in HR, to ensure that you are able to pick up on some of these things. Some of these things cannot be seen with the eye, but you have to tap into that, you know, emotional intelligence, ensure that, you know, you're doing right by the company and right by the division that really is the gatekeeper. So you have to ensure that whoever you're allowing to come through the gate makes sense. So, you know, a lot of time when I see people like, oh, I'm going to hire my friend, I tell my friends and associates, if you're not competent, I will not be hiring you. So don't even come at me if you know, because I'm not for it. It's nothing personal, but at the end of the day, you have a responsibility to the company where, you know, you have to be hiring people who are competent and, you know, are going to add value to the organization. So it's more than just you have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, whatever it is that you have, and all the years of experience, but what have you done? What, you know, what it is that you're bringing to the table? What value add would you bring to this position that will allow me to pick you over someone else?
And Uton, what have they done, and what will you do for me as a company?
Exactly.
That's why I'm saying you must be to do something that is going to forward the company.
Exactly.
And care about it. I think sometimes employees think that the company must pay me at the end of the month, but they are not thinking, but this is a contract that goes two ways. So
two ways.
Company
exactly.
I must deliver as well. So it goes two ways. Yeah.
Exactly.
And Dr. Ashley, I'm happy you mentioned that, because just to jump in, when you speak at times, sometimes you interview individuals and they'll tell you, you know, in a nutshell, it's all about the money when you talk to them. You know, what's the salary? What is this? What is the benefit? What are you bringing to the table? You ask the question, what it is that the expectation, and it's all about the money. And we're not saying that money is not involved, because none of us is going to be giving our service for entire lifetime without a salary. But I mean, the emphasis, I mean, you're coming for the first time, and for the students in particular who are listening, your first interview the first question cannot be, what's the salary? No. And my panelists, you can jump in. It should not be. Is it 4 million, 5 million, whatever million? I mean, I'm just from university, and I have my degree now, and therefore I need to be paid exactly what somebody who has been in the company for 5 years or 10 years that is going into. I have this.
And I'm glad you said that, Miss Anderson, because here's the thing that people believe. A position might want somebody who, has, a first degree, and the bandwidth of of what the company is willing to pay and the scope of the job might be X, and you have Y and Z, and expect to be paid Y and Z. Now, here's the understanding. Yes, you might have a degree, but if you are coming in an organization at the entry level, you cannot expect him to be paid based on your qualification if the job that you're doing doesn't warrant or is needed of that qualification. Though that qualification is going to bring some value to it, but your mindset cannot be, oh, I have a degree, why am I being paid this and all of that? Nope, you're not being paid for what you have, you're being paid for what the job requires. So people are of the view, oh, I have this, all of this behind my name yet, and they know themselves that they're very incompetent and still want to demand all sorts of things when they come to these interviews and making all sorts of ridiculous demands. But can you do this? What have you done there? What is your track record?
But
and especially for people who have no experience.
Do we sometimes say this because I went to cast? But sometimes I do think our universities and our educational institutions must take part of the blame for the poor young students coming in bright and bushy-tailed and think, I can tell you, if last year I interviewed maybe about 25, 30 students, every one of them wanted the same amount. Now, you can't tell me they all dreamt it up. They got that when they were briefed. Yeah.
Yep.
But you're not paying. I tell people, I'm not worth anything more than somebody with a high school diploma or somebody with a master's, etc. The fact that you have more qualification says to the company, I've invested more in myself, so you can expect more from me. Now I have to prove that you can get more from me. Because quite frankly, you can get somebody who may be half my age or 3 times the energy to go and clock the hours and put out the work. No, it's a reality.
It
right?
is.
You know, a piece of paper is simply a piece of paper. And I think sometimes the students need to start understanding that it shows that I've done step 1. You haven't done step 1 in investing in myself. That's what that piece of paper shows. So you got to go on the job, and now you're going to have to show that this value, I'm bringing value. And if they every day is in their head, I'm bringing value to this company.
Not only that, but just to add there that initial investment throughout your entire professional career, you're going to have to keep making that investment in yourself. So it's not just getting the degree and then stopping there. So based on the changes that are happening, we don't know what next year is going to be like. And so you have to consistently be investing in yourself. And that's personally something I look for on a resume, someone who did something in 2010. And so I do sales, I always have to remind you of that. Have you done any sales training between 2010 and 2020? Have you tried to upskill? And so that is very important for me as a recruiter as well, especially when we're looking at management positions where you are now expected to pour into other sales professionals.
Yep, and for the persons who wanting to come into HR and think, there are certifications in HR that proves to companies that you are serious about this thing. So, just like other professionals, it's important to make the investment. If you are serious about this thing, make the investment. And it starts by being a part of these HR bodies. Work your way from there if this is something that you really, really want to be a part of. The cliche saying, to whom much is given, much is required. If this is a career path that you want to be a part of, just know that. Yeah.
I think Matthew will be jumping in any minute now. And I like how you have all coined it in terms of the certification. It shows as an investment in yourself. But I think I liked how Dr. Ashley coined it before, because when you speak about persons that you have interviewed and all of them have the same figures, the truth be told also is that all of us, if not all of us, but most of us, even on the list panel here, or as parents, as aunties and uncles, especially back in the days, we have taught our children and we have said to our nieces and nephews that, I mean, if you study hard and graduate, you're gonna, we set a picture, you're gonna take us out of this poor life, this poverty, you're gonna take us, you're the one to buy the house for us, and you're the ones that are gonna go out there now and have the millions of dollars to help us. And so the truth of the matter, many of our students have focused, and our nieces and nephews and kids and friend, family and neighbors have so bought into that. So they're just waiting, many of them, and I'm sure there are many on this platform, quite a few, who are just waiting to say, I need this paper in my hand. And so, because once I get this certification, once I get this degree, I'm going to be making millions and millions of dollars. And so we, in our own community, in our own space, as practitioners, as educators, as professionals, have to now be doing a lot of remedial work, so to speak, and to be helping and educating our young persons, and especially those in university coming out of college. What are the expectations? What are the things that, you know, you might not get the money just stepping into the new job to buy back mama cow and to get back how many chickens and goats. And it's real, because you have a lot of young persons, I mean, their parents, their grandparents, they invest everything, all of the animals, everything, their house, their mortgage, everything. And so it is as if this is now the one child who would have ever graduated from university or even get this close to university from a generation of family and relatives. This is the only one now who have come here and able to graduate with a certification. This is the one who's going to make it. And so it has been very depressing for quite a number of them, because even outside of this arena, I am engaged with a lot of young persons. And so I speak to them and I encourage them. And a lot of them are very discouraged. A lot of them are depressed, because they're of the view, look, you have all taught us, you have all said to us that once we get this paper, we're going to be, you know, stepping out and buying the X type of vehicle, buying the house, and there's still many of them in their parents' home. There are many of them, their parents have to giving them lunch money to go to the job that they are now in. And it can be depressing. And so we really have a lot of work to do.
And I think part of it, as you're speaking, is how do we define success? Because if success was getting that piece of paper, then they're now expecting so much at the end of that first step. But if it is that, you know, you're all speaking about ensuring that they are the right fit. If you want to do HR, if you want to do whatever it is, engineering, dentistry, if you love it and you're enjoying it so much, that is what becomes success. And therefore there's a journey, because listen, I don't know if you all remember your first paycheck, right? I mean, your first paycheck. Back about how tiny that money is.
Listen.
Right?
I'm sorry, guys. Continue that, Ashley.
Paycheck, you call it, it more me like a stipend.
You know?
Very well, right, Matthew?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
You're coming up. You couldn't keep silent any longer.
Listen, I'll just add to that briefly. Before coming into the job that I have now at UTech, I was actually at a call center. Wasn't there very long. I think I was there about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And yes, on top of my first paycheck, the call center as well had to give me my last space, so I was doubly happy. So yes, I can empathize with that point, Dr. Ashley. You may continue.
No, you can go to your next segment.
Oh, you sure? No, man. You were getting ready to elaborate on something, so I wouldn't want to infringe. So
No,
you can finish. Oh, you sure?
the point was just though that sometimes I remember when I left college, I was so ambitious. I was not leaving. And at that time it was cast, so we were getting a diploma, but I wasn't leaving. And I decided I wanted to get a supervisor or a manager job post. And so I worked through college because in my head, I wanted to have 3 to 4 years experience when I left. I didn't want to be seen as being fresh. So I took a full-time job while I was full-time in college, right?
Very
Then I saw
interesting
this
there.
job being advertised at courts, a master's degree. Poor little Shirley, I'm not sure just I get diploma. And I decided, well, based on what them say, I can get it. I can do it and I can get it. So Shirley put on suit. I bought a suit to drop off my resume. A suit and a briefcase. I still have the picture today. And when I dropped off the resume, there was an office helper in the reception area. And being a country girl, I said, good morning. I asked her what to do, etc., etc. Years later, when I got the job and I asked my boss, how did I even qualify? He said, you were respectful to the lady at the front. She come around and said, there's a nice lady and you have to put her in the interview, right? So just because sometimes, again, you don't have the qualification, you have the ambition. But of course, when I went in, I was ready to run. Now, that pay slip was embarrassing. My husband and I, we met in college, so we graduated together. His salary was 4 times my own. My friends laughed at me that I took the job, but I saw the job and the potential of the company. I thought, listen, I could have gotten a job that paid more, but I wanted to work with courts. It was the largest company, largest marketing budget, and I wanted to therefore work in that environment. Oh, they offered me less than peanuts. It was embarrassing. Within my first year, I got an increase 3 times, not once, not twice, 3 times. And so that's why I say to people, don't look on the dollars and cents. For each person, your experience is going to be so very, very different, Some people might get the job, but it might be the work environment. It might give you different benefits, but don't only look on that dollar value. Because I can tell you, I'm so happy I took the peanuts. And if I had to do it 20 times, I would take the peanuts again.
Very well said there, Dr. Ashley.
You just
very
need to
well
get your
said.
foot through the door.
That's right.
Exactly.
In there, and then the rest is history. I tell persons all the time, you are qualified, you have this, you have the competence, but this is not what the position is. But take what you're getting now, just come in and show us what you got. And as you said, 3 times increase. And so we have persons 3 times and 4 times being promoted step by step and jumping over some levels too.
Yes.
Very, very true. Wow. Very colorful experience there, Dr. Ashley. While all of you have been talking, I've been just making jottings like crazy. I think for the next part of our discussion that I'd want to go into, I remember that it had been said earlier that attitude is a must. And interestingly enough, I think it was maybe a day ago, or at least a day ago, possibly, I thought of this acronym in my head, KASC, and I thought of coining that as a topic, possibly for employment empowerment, or maybe for another forum like this. The topic would have been the ideal case with a K, and that would have spelled knowledge, attitude, skills, and experience. So in a brief word for each of the panelists that are here, I know that Shelly Gay had to go away, but for another time. But briefly, I would like each of you to say, for you, in terms of looking for candidates, what would be the ideal case with a K? Knowledge, attitude, skills, and experience. And if you want to replace it with a C, the buzzword earlier was competence. So we have two cases, one with the K, one with the C. What would be your ideal case, panelists? I think I want to hear from Alyssa, because I realized the discussion was a little heated between the other three. So Alyssa, I'll take you before the other three.
Matthew, that's me.
Yes, that is you, Miss Bremer.
I'm
Brimming.
Alice or Alice, so I'm just checking on that.
Oh, go right ahead, Miss Brimming.
Okay, so as I've stated so many times and I've repeated so many times, I recruit sales professionals. And so I also mentioned that our process really starts with, so I'm a third-party recruiter, and so for my clients, we have to establish who the ideal candidate is. And so in sales, we want to talk about, in terms of the competencies, we want to talk about, has the candidate sold to the particular market? Have they, had conversations at the CEO level, the management level, is it regular consumer level? We want to talk about the price of the products that they've sold. We want to talk about the sales cycle. So those are sort of the technical aspects of the position. Obviously, salespeople are expected to, and for most of the companies that reach out to us, you got to be out there getting the business. So you have to have that drive and that desire. You have to have that hunger in terms of the attitude. So you have to be able to, well, one, you have to be extremely motivated to really get up every day. People probably telling you no all the time. You have to be committed. You're going to win no matter what. Nothing is going to throw you off. Like, there is nothing that's more important than what you want to achieve. And so those, I would say, are the attitudes. So in terms of the skills, you want to be able to prospect. You have to go out there and find the customers. You have to be able to build a relationship with your customers. You have to be able to sell the value of your product. You have to be able to ask the right questions to unearth the needs of your prospects so you can provide a solution and hence close your sale. And so in terms of the experience, like I mentioned, it would be important for you to have sold in the past. However, who you sold to, certain things are of more importance. And just to also add, Matthew, that a part of the assessment tool that I utilize is that not only does it look for, well, it is looking for the ideal candidate based on the role that I've inputted and the specifications. However, we can also see natural talent. So even though you might not have the experience in terms of the skills, the selling competencies, we can see what we call your general will. Do you have a will to sell? We can also see your DNA. Are you the type of person who is going to control your emotion in the sales process? Are you going to handle those objections? Are you comfortable really talking about money? And does it matter who you're selling to? Are you going to talk to a CEO the same way you're going to talk to me, for example? So those are some of the things that would be our case at TPL.
All right, thank you for that, Ms. Bremer. Ms. Anderson, your 2 cents on your ideal case, one with the K or one with the C.
Okay, well, just to complete, basically as it relates to the case K and the C, is that based on myself being a HR generalist practitioner, is that, and the business that we work is manufacturing. So you have a wide cross section of individuals, and especially as it relates to the job functions would vary from one to another, depending on the hierarchy in which you'll be placed. But one of the things that is very important, I want to use the word attitude, because one of the things I would normally say, attitude determines your altitude, and other persons coined it different ways and add other things to it. Because while you may be knowledgeable, if you don't have the right attitude, you certainly will not continue and remain a part of this business. If it is that you have the experience at the same time, the education, the experience, and it still doesn't add up to the right attitude, Because one of the things, the best of persons, and it's sad and it's unfortunate sometimes when we have to bid goodbyes and terminate relationships that we see in many instances with just the right attitude and be able to be adaptable and to be trainable, that you're able to allow yourself to grow into, then you would have this person or individuals many times could have soar and do so much better with themselves. And sometimes you ask, you see them even outside of the workspace and they are just stuck. And they're stuck not because they don't have the ability in terms of knowledge wise, etc., but they don't have the right attitude. So I really just want to get stuck on that one, especially for my students that will be listening in particular, is that you have to have the right attitude. And you say, what are the right attitude? The right attitude is an attitude that will listen and that you're able to take criticism and not to take it in a way that you're so and of course the truth is that we who are doing the coaching and the mentoring need to make it a little bit palatable, but at the same time make it very clear, because sometimes we can be a little brutal, right, Uton? You know, and we have to understand the personality of the individual, because each is own. There are persons that I can call in my office and I can say, look, you need to do X, Y, Z. This is not happening. And another one, I can't do it that way. I have to say, you are doing a wonderful job. We talk about the sandwich treatment. So you talk about the positive you are doing, the sandwich part, the meat part, the burger. You say, well, this is what needs to be changed. And then you close it off again with something nice. So we have to also understand who it is that we're speaking to, because a lot of times, the person will say, that is how my father used to talk to me. And nobody never talked to me. So I don't know where my dad, and even not my father, and even not my mother, and even, so we have to bear that in mind. But the attitude for the students, I mean, that has to be, it's something that you allow yourself to be critiqued, and to be guided. And if you don't understand, and even if you're upset, don't be upset for long that you're having attitude and you're turning off everybody and you're forming a little clique and you're saying this about your manager, your supervisor, or the company. You have to be very careful, and especially when you're in the wrong. Because the truth is there are times when you're in the right, and as managers too, we need to address it, because many times even as HR, I have to call managers in, and say, this, I don't think you handle this situation the right way. And necessarily too, in all fairness, you have to put the worker and the manager together and say, this is how we plan to move forward. But from whether management level or junior management, whatever level, you have to have the right attitude. Thanks.
Totally agree.
All right, Mr. Vessel, Dr. Ashley, anything to add? What would be your ideal case? One with the K, one with the C.
K, spell it. So knowledge, attitude, what's the SENE for?
Skills and experience.
Skills and experience. I think for me, I think you can train for knowledge. So though it's a nice to have, I am always very careful, because sometimes people say they have the knowledge and when they come in, they don't. So I'm very careful of hiring for that knowledge. Yeah, so I put that as a baseline. But some of the skills that I'm looking for is persons who work well under pressure. That's an interesting one. You spend most of your life at work. It must be pleasant. You should enjoy what you're doing every day. You shouldn't be going to somewhere that's miserable. So for me, if I'm hiring for my company or even for our clients, we're always looking for someone who is going to know how to. My area is a very, very, very high stress area. We're working extremely quickly. We have huge targets that are impacting huge companies or countries, etc. And if you do wrong, the entire country is going to be there to tear you down. If you do right, then nobody will remember that you ever existed. Great. So a lot of people don't understand how to work under pressure. So for us, that thing of working well under pressure, but bigger than that is humility. Ms. Anderson kind of referred to that. Humility, to me, is that linchpin. So you need to be humble yet confident. How do you balance both of them? but you must have humility because no one is perfect. Once you go into the job, you're going to be doing things that need corrected. You're going to need to be coached. You're going to need to be mentored, whether you're the CEO or whether you're the office helper, regardless. And so sometimes I know students have a little bit of a struggle because, especially sometimes we get our straight A students and they're used to getting all positive reinforcement. You know, you did this right, you did that right. Yeah, this is real life. This is real life. Unfortunately, sometimes your teacher might have thought it right, and in my job, another consultant might have thought it right, and then the client thinks it's but you still a deliverable that you had to meet. So how are you going to therefore take that feedback? The overarching competency, sometimes persons use that word competency very loosely. It is that ability to apply that knowledge set, your skill set, within a defined workplace for critical work functions. It's a defined workplace, critical work functions. And if you start putting all of them together, then that to me is what we're looking for. So to kind of wrap it up, I'm looking for humility, confidence, that blend, persons who can work well under pressure. And yes, I want the knowledge, but it is not the priority because you can always train for knowledge. You know, I took a job in a company which is as a marketing exec. And within 2 months, I was moved over to operations. I was so upset with HR. I was so angry. Who did they think they were? I didn't apply for an operations job. I knew nothing about operations. But the attitude that I had said, listen to me, they're paying me. They saw something in me that I never thought I had. And so I took it. And I ended up that I absolutely loved the area, you know. But again, therefore, it means that I had the right attitude and I was humble enough, even though I was confident that I was right, to know that somebody else had a different opinion that may have been leading that organization into a different direction that I wasn't able to see at the time. So, over to you, Ton.
So I'm here looking back and I'm like, everything that has been said thus far by the panelists, I'm like, yeah, I'm in total agreement. But to add to case, I'm going to add pace. It's important, you know, to have the passion. Whatever it is that you want to do in life, ensure that you have the passion for it. And then the A, you're looking at adaptability along with your attitude. Very important. And then can leave out competence. You know, it's very important to have the competence. And like Dr. Ashley would have clearly said, you know, it's some things, you know, you can teach and train. Some you really can't. Is that you have it or you don't. But even if you don't, there is the, you know, the own mindset of adapting to change and the willingness to learn something different. And you know, and doing all of this would add to your experience. And people might think, oh, you don't have no experience, but life is an experience. And you think coming out of school, you know, oh, I don't know how to do this. Trust me, during your college years, you would have garnered so many things. You can speak about the things that you did in this particular club or society and all of that. All of that is experience. So never tell yourself, oh, you don't have no experience. Yeah, you do. So don't sell yourself short. You have experience, and that's you know, one of those things. It might not be in a work environment sometimes, but you know, those little responsibilities and those things that you would have been exposed to would give you, help you along your journey in garnering those things, to add value to whatever job it is that you are going to be undertaking. But ensure whatever you do in life that you are passionate about it. Because in doing that, the job will be like second nature to you. Whatever stress it comes with, and you are able to compartmentalize and, ensure that whatever areas in your life don't spill over in areas that it don't belong. And that's something that I always tell my staff, tell everybody that I come across. It's always important. If you compartmentalize in life, you'll be winning, because you can't do and take on the cares of the world. And whichever job that you're in, every job has its own stress and burdens. But you gotta leave it there. When you clock out, you have to give attention to different areas of your life, and you have to live a balanced life. That's how you're going to really add the experience of life is so great. But if you confine yourself to a box, then that's exactly where you remain. But if you're open to the possibilities in life, to experience and grow, there's no limit to those things. But pace yourself. That's what life is about. Thank you.
All right, and just to add to what my other panel members have said, that attitude, humility, those qualities are actually quite important. For example, most of the times we have issues in the department, they're interpersonal. For example, you and your boss not getting along. Some persons, the first thing they want to do is to write. When to write to HR, and I'm going to copy this one, and I'm going to copy that one, and no, not a good idea to copy the whole company if you and your boss have a problem. So those things sometimes you don't learn in, when you're in college, but just to be humble, not to say that you're going to sit there and take the abuse if it's a toxic environment that you're in. Speak out, but just be careful, how you address certain issues. Because sometimes, most times, each person has their own way of doing things, and, you might have your own rights. But if you go and copy your boss, and then copy your boss about an issue you're having with your boss or your coworker, it then creates another level of animosity. So sometimes humility and way of doing things, gets you to the end, and problems can be resolved if there is some kind of tension in the environment.
So just to piggyback on that, Jackie, toxicity is something that people overlook sometimes, And you have a problem with somebody, and the first thing you really should do is to go to that person and say, you said something or you did something and it made me feel this sort of way. Sometimes people go about life and they don't know, because nobody took the time to tell them that we're doing something and it's not right. Yes. But we allow, these things to foster, and then it becomes, from one little small thing that could have been handled and addressed in that moment, becomes something which is toxic. And I'm glad that Dr. Ashley pointed out to, and Ms. Anderson pointed out to, the whole thing of being humble. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own selves and in our own little box, and it's really, life is not about you. And that's what I tell people. Sometimes when people hear me say that, it's like, so out of order. But if you really think about it, life is not about any one of us, because when people come to us with various things, it has nothing to do with us, but sometimes we take things so personal that we sometimes lose sight of the bigger picture. And things can be resolved right there and then, instead of escalating it to where
And if you have writing, I always tell people, if you're upset and you wrote something, don't send it out. Leave it. Let it sit. Let it sit for 2-3 days. read it back and see if you feel the same way.
Same way.
Send it to
Exactly.
someone who does not know anything about the situation and see how they interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times when people send those emails, how it is interpreted may not necessarily be how it was intended.
Right.
Causes the situation to blow up. And sometimes 2 or 3 days later, you may not feel as emotional about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you're angry, if you're upset, step back. You might want to write it so you capture your emotion, but don't send it.
Yes. Don't send it.
Yeah.
Comes back to emotional intelligence.
Intelligence.
Really
Yes.
does come back to that. And I don't think we really, you know, emphasize on that enough.
Yeah.
It's so important. So
Yeah.
important. You know,
And
but people, yeah.
this concept of which again I tell people that all the time. Management is not in one way. It's not only for the leader to manage the staff, but if you know what you need out of your leader, then and you know that the leader is a human being with each leader is going to have a different persona, then you have to think about how am I going to get the best that I need. I need certain tools. My job is to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and I need certain tools. Every time I ask my boss, him tell me no. Maybe I need to change how I'm asking. Maybe I need to change when. Maybe I need to be humble and somebody else could ask because I noticed that person says yes, because my objective is to make sure I can complete 1, 2, 3. There are so many different ways that you can think it. But it's just how do I become the most efficient within the environment? And that's why when I spoke about competency, I spoke about a defined work environment because the world ain't pretty and it's not perfect. So it is how successful can I be within the environment that I'm made to work?
Mm-hmm. Correct. That's true.
All right, very well said there, Dr. Ashley. All right, we are at the end of our 2 hours. Wow, my, how time has passed. So
When you're having fun.
indeed, Mr. Vassal. So at this time, I'm going to open the floor for questions from our students who are here in the session. So students, don't be shy. Our panelists are here, they don't bite, you know, don't be shy, guys. If you have any questions at all, feel free to ask.
Don't be shy, guys. I guess we did that well.
Yes, Dr. Ashley, you're saying something?
I'm saying you might have to go pick on some of them.
Okay. All right. So students, no one has any questions? Who is this? Anthony Chung. Okay, I'm now gonna start calling names now. I really don't like to call names, you know. Connelly Jones, Carlissa DeCosta.
I would just make a point.
Hi.
Oh, okay, great. Somebody's going to go.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, I wasn't going to really ask a question. I was just going to state that I am very in love with this session at the moment. I have class starting 3 minutes ago. However, I am really, really stuck here because it was so informative, and I really love the energy and the information that has been put forward. Seeing that I'm a third-year student, it really kind of changed or improved upon my perception of what the working field is and what it really is like to be in the mind of a recruiter. So I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you too, Connelly. And I hope you filled out the evaluation, which is posted in the chat, so that we can have your feedback.
Yes, Mr. Francis, I did that.
Okay, thank you, Connelly. It was a pleasure having you. All right, anyone else has any questions, comments, critiques? Yay, nay? Any day now, anytime now? Yes, no, maybe so? Somebody? Anybody? One body?
Good afternoon. Similar to what Miss Jones said, the session was very informative. I really liked and enjoyed it. And as someone who is about to leave the university into the working world, I learned a lot from this session.
Thank you for that, Teddy Ann. Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Hi, good evening, Carlissa here.
Hi,
I would just like
Carlissa.
to say thank.
Oh, go ahead, Carlissa. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying good evening and thank you to all the panelists who came out and spent a very long while keeping us entertained, right? And also for Mr. Francis for putting this all together. I actually have a presentation in the next 5 minutes, so I will believe it. I also remember Dr. Ashley. She was mentioning something about our qualifications, and it's not just that you're investing in yourself, but you're also putting in the work to say, yes, I have the qualifications, but I can actually do the do. And that really just connected with me on a different level.
Thank you for that, Carlissa. And before you go, I hope you got the chance or will get the chance to fill out the evaluation so we can have your feedback. Thank you again for coming. Okay, thank you. All right, Anissa, Miss Brimmer, Miss Brimming, you said you had a point earlier. You can go ahead and make that point.
No, I remember Utah was saying in terms of experience that persons, you garner different experiences outside of the professional space, and it's just really how you represent that on your resume. So it's all about selling yourself on that piece of paper that recruiters are going to look at. So we've done so many things, maybe not in a professional space. I mean, for me, doing church activities, for example, you do so much in that arena that if you don't have any professional experience, then you can somehow use what the job is asking for to respond to it based on what you've done. Because it's all about what you have done so far, what you're able to do, how you contribute to the role.
Okay, awesome.
That's a great point that you just made, and I'm happy you mentioned it, because in terms of you volunteer as a student, whether it is your neighborhood association, church activity, and even for those students who are on this platform now, you still have an opportunity. So Mr. Francis is here and may need your help, or another faculty or so on, that you can volunteer on the online platform to see when mics are to be muted, use up your skills and have those done as an activity that you have spearheaded and volunteer. It speaks volume.
Okay, thank you for that point, Anissa, and thank you for adding Miss Anderson.
Matthew, can I throw a question to the panelists?
Sure. Before you do, a student here has their hand raised, so I'm just going to take that question and then you go ahead, Dr. Ashley. Okay, go ahead, Sabrina, with your question.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sabrina Davis. Well, according to what Mr. Vassell and Dr. Ashley has said about the experience, as a third-year student, I always find myself being reluctant in applying for jobs because on the job description, it asking for experience. But going in depth and breadth with the case, I can also use that as an asset on my resume. And also I'm a big in volunteerism. So that just give me the push to be more confident. So next time, definitely if I see a job and I feel like apply for it, I will, regardless of the 2 years and 3 years experience that the job is requested.
Great.
Yep, you should.
All right, Dr. Ashley, you can go ahead with your, okay, I see another hand pop up here. But Dr. Ashley, go ahead and then I'll take Shanoya's question.
For the panelists, really the HR specialist. There's a trend over the last maybe 5-10 years where persons now put their pictures on their resumes. How do you feel about it? Is that positive? Is it neutral? Is it negative? How is it viewed from where you?
All right, I'll jump at this one because I've thought about it for some time, and I don't think it's necessary. And especially and not just even just the picture, some of the colorful resumes that you get. If it is that you're in, say you're doing marketing or you're in some IT and web programming, and you want to show your skills on your resume with all that kind of presentation, and I mean, if it's a modeling job you're going in for, you have to be careful. So if it's a corporate setting, what I think, especially in my head as the recruiter, show me your experience, show me your qualifications, show me, your story, whether it's your CV or your resume, and let it be that when no. So because I don't want to be biased. I don't want to be just seeing a picture and then the first thing hit me is a picture and I say, oh, he's handsome or he's not so handsome, because we are humans, and we tend to, whether knowingly or not, sometimes we tend to be pulled in a particular direction. So for me, especially in terms of a corporate setting, I personally don't see the need for the picture in this kind of space at this point, but my other panelists may think different. So as I said, if it is a modeling job, if it is something that you're going to be showing you and you just want to knock the person out, say, I have the physique, I have the muscles, then bodybuilding, oh, here is a six pack. But outside of that, you're all laughing at me, don't laugh at me.
Well, yes, that is true. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's really, outside of those settings, I don't see the necessity of it. It is best that I look at your resume, make that distinction, and then when I invite you for the interview, I'm seeing you, I'm talking with you, I'm hearing from you, and that works very well for me.
Okay, well, just to piggyback on Dr. Ashley's question, that is a question that I'm frequently asked too. To be honest, sometimes I'm hesitant to answer, but I think from what I've heard generally, I've heard that it's acceptable in some fields, but the HR persons in the room can correct me or advise me further if I'm wrong or may have the perspective misconstrued, but I've heard that it's acceptable in some fields. So I would love some further clarity or enlightenment on that.
Just to say that there are pros and of course cons. The pro is that if you're an elderly person, applying for a job, you can always use a picture when you're a 20-year-old. And persons might think that, oh, well, this person looks very nice, give the person a look in, if, providing that you fit all the other qualities and experience, etc., that the position requires. But from another perspective, it could also become a discrimination issue. This person, but we're just picking this person because, or we didn't pick this person because, suppose you're, for example, a Muslim and you have that picture and that person may not necessarily fit into the environment that we're thinking of. So it's better to be neutral. So I would leave it off because, persons, as another colleague said, we are humans and we don't want our own biases to come into play when we know so-called too much. Let's just meet, interview, see if the person fits, and then make a selection. But the picture sometimes can cause too much problems. So I'd rather leave it off.
Okay. Oh, you want to go ahead and use that?
Go ahead, and Anisha, go ahead.
All right. So for me personally, so I want to put some general points out there now. So for example, we live in an evolving world. I feel like whilst the traditional way of recruiting remains, it's sort of changing as well. And so, for example, you have professional profiles now that recruiters are looking to find talent. And let's be real, a lot of that, you are represented there as who you are. Your photo is there, whatever it is that you're doing is also there. So for example, on LinkedIn, which has become another source of, hunting grounds for recruiters. So to some extent, your persona does who you are in terms of that is represented. So the way people recruit people are not looking at your social media profile to see what you represent to kind of get that cultural fit to some extent. So I'll just leave that as a point. I don't know if in another couple of years it will be totally acceptable. But for me right now, when I get a resume that has the photo or not, it really does not add any value because I'm not really looking at what that photo, it's not skewing or changing. I'm just looking at the information that you presented in terms of your experience. So it's not adding any value for me being the recruiter looking at it. And similar, the colorful and just distracting backgrounds and templates that can be utilized, sometimes they don't necessarily pay off in the end, in my opinion, as well. Just being the person who looks at them. I'm not for them. Depending on the position, yes, you want to showcase your talent. So if you're in marketing or graphic design, I don't expect words on a paper. But if you're going to be telling me about your sales experience, then I don't want to have to be struggling to see what is there because it had to be squeezed up to the side because we have to have this nice fancy design here. No. So that's my take on it. I don't need the picture on the resume. I know a lot of templates for resumes now have it. So I'm guessing that could be an indication of where we're going on a global scale. So, but I don't really, it's not necessary. It's not going to make you more likely to be selected over someone who does not have it.
Well, for me, it's, I mean, if you have it, it's okay. If you don't, it's okay. It has no bearing in the selection process for me. However, looking at it from a global perspective, things have changed. The way in which people write resumes, there are even professions where there are persons who write people's resume. Sometimes it's not reflective of what the person is competent to do, but that's another story. But you want to ensure that whatever it is that you're applying for is befitting to what and how your resume is laid out. So like Anisha would have clearly said that, I was going to say that, I'm glad you said it. I mean, some of the fonts and the graphics and all that stuff, if you're not really applying for something that is skewed towards that, we want to see the relevant information. So some information can be left out, like your religion, your date of birth, your marital status, your address can be left out because a job should not be dependent on where you live. It should solely be dependent on what it is you're bringing to the table, which is your experience, competence, qualifications, stuff along those lines, things that you would have done and things that will add value to the position in which you're seeking. So, all those unnecessary stuff really does need to be mentioned on your resume. So I think somebody mentioned in the chat about what font size. Keep it simple. Arial, New Romans, the other one, which is Courier. Keep it 10, 12, and the less, keep it, if you can keep it to one page, great. If not, 2 pages max. Because really and truly, you want to think about, because nowadays your resume is channeled through the new way of doing things in shortlisting people. And so you want to ensure on your resume you have those keywords or phrases that will allow you to be shortlisted. Thousands of applicants are coming in vying for the very same position that you want. You want to ensure that you have those things that will really allow you to stand out when you make your application. So less is more sometimes, the going above and beyond all those little things. If it's not needed for the job, if you have to think twice about it, it might mean that it's not really needed on your resume. So, less is more, I would say. Less is more. If like Miss Anderson would have clearly said, if you're not applying for a modeling position, you really don't need a face shot. But in the way in which the world is doing, I'm looking from things, as I recall doing a consultation in the US, identity theft is a thing. So you want to, it depends on the market, I would say. If a face shot is required, you might have like 100 other Jane Doe with the same qualification as you. What's going to separate you? Sometimes it might be a face. I don't know. But for me, I don't have a problem with people, putting it on their resume, but it doesn't give you a foot in or a foot out. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, the case and the pace. So that is basically it.
And just to add to that, sometimes too, and then I feel like you might have to also consider photo etiquette. Like some of the photos that I've seen should not be on your resume. Like I can blatantly say that, no, not that photo. Please come with another one. If you're going to put a photo, it needs to fit a certain criteria at least. Some of them could do the opposite for you.
Yeah, I've seen some of those photos, and you said, okay,
well, for me, I still keep the bias away. So even though I would probably say not the best photo, I'm not going to write you off for a bad photo as well. Just like it's not going to make you likely to get the job because you present a particular way, I also don't let the bias go the other way as well. So I would say to myself, you could have done yourself a favor by not putting that, but let's see what the experience. And if you have the experience, I will move forward. And if we get to the interviewing stage, and that would be a comment that I leave with you, because that's also important to provide that feedback. Because, sometimes it's not 100% bad. However, you give the constructive criticism and move on.
And your email addresses, people.
Yes.
Very important. I come across some email addresses like,
Lord.
We need to look into that, because I promise you, if I see a certain email address come to me, it's a no for me. I promise you. You have to have something that represents you well. And some of these emails are not cutting it. Keep it for your social media. You probably want to keep it there for your social media. But for your professional life, create a new one.
Leave them off your resume as well. People need to be able to contact you. Please ensure that what is there is correct. Because really, there's only so much we can do.
And speaking, I agree 100% with that, because some of the email addresses, they're really, really, really too much to speak of and to even say on this platform. But also, if it is that you have applied for a job, apart from reading up and getting some background information on the job, the company that you're applied for, please, students, make sure that whatever contact number you give, the response, the record, once up, whatever details road.
The voicemail.
And the unfortunate thing, sometimes you get the voicemail and you say, okay, all right, let me close my eyes and try again. This resume look like somebody I really need to talk with. And even when you get them on the phone, how they answer the phone again in real life, it's questionable. So please, students, and another one before we end this session, please ensure that networking is good. But if you have a family or a friend that send your resume out, please ask them, where have you sent my resume? Because sometimes we call a friend, a family, your mother, your wife send it out. And when we call as HR practitioner, me never apply for that. Oh, no, tell me about you. Who you be? And sometimes I'm just have to hold tight on my chair, and not just for me. Other of my colleagues would say the same things when we share and are talking. So you have to ensure if you're networking, somebody sending your resumes out for you, and so on. And even if somebody prepare your resume, ensure that when you look at it before it is sent out, because again, sometimes person preparing the resume, sending it out, and the linking of information are off and skewed and error. You didn't work out explain what is there because the error was made. You didn't look at it, and then you come in the room wondering, wow, the years that have been gapped, where were you at that time? You're looking up in the space. Your sister works at a particular company and you put it on your resume because it looks good. Please, I know I'm making you all crack up, but
no, man, it's true. It is so true.
These are real. Please avoid them. Avoid them, students. It can be a real turnoff when you sit and you're looking up in the sky. And sometimes, if you're just honest to say, I didn't prepare it, it was an error, but you're trying to justify the error that is on it, it's just a no-no.
So in other words, do not lie, okay? Whatever you put on your resume, and I say this to students all the time, whatever you put on your resume, please ensure that you can quantify it, qualify it, and account for it, right? Over to anyone who wanted to make a point.
Well, Paula, it's a very important thing to note. People tend to put all sorts of things on their resume, notwithstanding that companies do background check. Your TRN is very crucial. Your TRN, I'm able to, one call I have to make, because your TRN is a public number. There's nothing private about it, even though it's skewed to you. All we need to do, once you sign to something that gives us authority to do any research on you, and we run your TRN, we can tell you your history. So we can know if you didn't work by X place or Y place. We can tell. And people, I don't know, for whatever reason, that if you have to think twice again about something, don't do it. Don't put it there. If you don't belong there, don't put it there.
Same for the social media and some of the programs.
Yep. Your true, authentic self. That's what you should come with. And sometimes, if you're not hired somewhere, it can be a blessing. You never know. But whatever it is for you, and I genuinely believe this. If it's for you, it will be for you.
Yeah.
And you can go with your true, authentic self. And if it's something that it is put in the universe for you, you will get it. But you have to trust the process and do so in a way that your integrity is not questioned.
I see something, Matthew, I'm not sure if you're going to raise that point in the chat. So a student who is in the School of Engineering saying they wish
I'm just
there
looking
was
at
greater
it, actually.
exposure to gain experience.
Wow.
And
Before we
take
that, yes. Shania, I thank you for your patience. You can go ahead with your question before the panelists continue.
Well, to be honest, from the time I put my hand up, each person that spoke kind of answered me a little bit. I took notes because even the previous speaker, he kind of went ahead and gave me a few pointers that I was about to ask about. Anicia and also Miss Ashley. All of them kind of gave me a few pointers, but I was going to ask. I sent out a few applications, not a few, a number of, and I have yet to receive like a response or to say they have received or whatever. I was going to ask like for some encouraging words, like what to do, like in that sense. But Miss Ashley mentioned a point earlier that you can get dressed and show up, just show that you're interested in getting that job. But does anybody else have anything on that can encourage or whatever in that sense?
One of the things I'd say about sending out resumes is that very often we have one resume and we send the exact resume regardless of what job we're applying for. So we might have studied tourism, and we send to marketing companies, we send to banks, we send to call centers, we send everywhere we can think of because we're so desperate to get a job, and that's great. However, you do have to ensure that, well, you know, you have that part at the top. Each of you call it something different.
Overview.
A summary or an overview or a objective, etc. But that objective that you had in tourism have nothing to do with my beer company. It really is a misfit. So, you know, I ain't calling you. You know, so you have to think through some of those things. They talked a little bit about the photos, etc. I will tell you that I'm skewed, with the exception that I'm not convinced. Miss Anderson said if they're going to model, sometimes if you really have to have a big photo and gave me less information, that to me tells me what's going to happen on the job. You're not focusing on objectives. Already you took yourself out, you know. We spoke about things like fonts, etc. But here's the biggest thing, those typos and the English. If you didn't take the time to spell check, have somebody else read over your resume. Why should I take the time to call you? And so I would tell you, have a neutral person who doesn't know you. Always say a neutral person, because your friends and family sometimes tend to be loving, you know? They're gonna, but get somebody who is neutral to look on your resume and see if it needs to be improved. See if, I see some small things sometimes. You might have, yes, you would select someone, but they took the time to write out their CXC passes, and the CXC pass in English was 4. Why are you putting that other 4 on your resume? Your resume is your marketing tool. Why? That doesn't market you in any way. So sometimes there's small things on that resume that is making you not be selected. And a neutral party is the person, I think, who can advise you best. Just ask somebody else, again, who doesn't know you. Would you hire me? Not, is this a good resume? Because sometimes the question we ask is wrong. Would you hire me for the job? And if they say no, why wouldn't you hire me? And I think if you approach it that way, your responses might be a little different. You might change that volunteer work that you did, and you might now start putting some of the end results that you had rather than just put it as a sideline thing on it. So get some help with it, and I would dare tell you that you probably might get some different results.
Yeah, you have to tailor your resume for the position that you're looking for, ensuring that you're putting those key things that that position is asking for. Nothing generic really works, even in medicine. You have to get that skewed medication that will help you with whatever ailment that you have. So for example, you have gas. You're not going to take a Panadol for the gas. You have to take something that is skewed to get some Pepto-Bismol. So, it's the same concept when you're writing your resume, ensure that your resume is skewed towards that particular job that you want to undertake from that particular. And it doesn't matter what your training is in. Exactly. Because what you having whatever accolades means that you're trainable. So you want to ensure that whatever experience you can draw on, you can maneuver and really write it in such a way where the position in which you are applying for, it's aligned to that same thing. The generic things will work, and you'll be looked over if you keep writing your resume that way and send out the same thing like Dr. Ashley would have said. It really not going to work, because if we're looking for generic things, even in an entry-level job, there are things that are asked.
Yeah. Uton, do you get some of these resumes that they haven't even had the time to put your company name in there?
Listen,
They just send
come across so many things.
Yeah.
But even though I don't recruit for entry positions, I realize as well for persons who are at the executive level, some of these errors come across, and that's why I'm a firm believer. I'm not shaken or moved by your accolades or experience. If you're not competent or passionate about whatever it is I'm looking for, there is no way I'm going to give it the time of day.
Yes.
Anybody can have this and anybody can have that. But what are you bringing to the table? That's what is important to me.
And just to add, the fact of the matter is you have prepared your resume and the job description. So look careful at the job description, skew your resume according to what is the job description is requested.
Absolutely.
Because we get so many of them, you have one position and you may get 1,000 odd persons applying. There are some specifics that we are looking for, and once they're matching the job description, automatically you're pulled from that group and added to more being shortlisted. So that is very important. And just to add to, because I know quite a number of companies will have the different platforms. Once you send your resume, electronically, there's a response, etc., etc. But the truth of the matter is, when I speak to other my practitioner colleagues, is that many times, and it's no excuse, the truth is that sometimes there's not enough manpower to respond to every single one, especially if you're just handing it through, you're just sending it, dropping it off at the gate, at the security post, and all of that. And it's a work in progress. But once you are able to match the job description, you will somehow, be pulled from that, even probably just for a telephone interview. And one of the things we must leave with the students too is that once your resume comes in and you get that call, this is an opportunity now to market and to sell yourself. What is very disappointing many a times is that the resumes are well written, it is matching with the job description, but the moment the person comes through the door and open their mouth and you ask one question, everything just goes downhill. And many a times as panelists, we feel so disappointed.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we say, okay, this is how I'm putting them because these are the 10 top ones. And from this man, there's going to be some excitement around here. And when the first 5 come in, you say, dear God, what went wrong? So,
Headache makes Allison.
Yes.
Headache.
Make sure that once you get the opportunity through the door, and sometimes it's that, and I'm happy gone are the days when you really have these many persons coming in the lobby, sitting and looking at each other, and some persons get a little fearful, a little more nervous because that one look brighter and how that one dressed look like that one is going to get the job. Once you come on the platform, and a lot of us are doing this type of platform to do our interviews, is that make sure you are dressed for the occasion. Make sure come on the platform before to ensure that your connections are going right. If you know you live in a particular area or community where there's a lot of hilly terrains and then so the reception is not good or whatever it is, go somewhere with a friend, a space where the internet connection as best as possible, humanly possible will come through accurately. Make sure your background is as such that it doesn't distract, this one for thing on the wall, this one for all kind of stuff. Where your mic is opening, there's a lot of shouting, there's a lot of screaming. Just prepare, because this opportunity out of 1,500 resume, one position, and therefore you have to bring your best self. Your best self needs to come.
The thing about technology is that it has made our lives as HR practitioners very much easier. This HR analytics and algorithms really do help. So when your resume is processed through these things, when companies send out, their link to their application HR systems, the algorithm is set up in a way, and I'm so happy that I'm exposed to these things in writing these things, so that when you're sending a resume, you look for key things. So look through the job description Look for what the job entails and what you'll be required to do in terms of performing this job. And find somewhere to put it in your resume so that when the system is doing this algorithm, it picks up your resume. There are thousands of applicants coming though, and sometimes for most of these positions, we probably just need like 30 or 50. What's going to set you apart when you send in your application? It certainly won't be something that is generic. It will go into file 13, I promise you. So, you just want to ensure that, and don't be discouraged. You might send out, thousands of resumes. And I think I just got a new idea for my TikTok. So people, when you're sending out your resume, think about what it is that you're putting on your resume and really think, why am I not getting a call yet? What can you do differently, to ensure that your resume, you get a call back. And it's so important as what Ms. Anderson said, when whoever sends out your resume, you want to ensure that, wherever it's being sent, that you have an idea where it's going. And if you are looking for a job, ensure that you change your voicemail, because if we don't get through to you, the voicemail is going to pop up and it's going to tell us something about you. Do we want this person in our organization? No, let's say, all the hype things that the young folks are saying these days. We know what those are. So once you have those things in your voicemail, it's boy, you just might just lose that opportunity. So you want to ensure that whatever it is that is sent out represents you well. And like Ms. Anderson said, if someone wrote your resume and have a great command of the English language and you don't, probably you can do some reading and do some practice, because you're going to need to come in that interview and market yourself, which is really important. Everybody going to come and start on the same level in the interview process. It's what you do with that opportunity that will make a difference. So you want to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward and don't sell something that you're not able to keep. Because bearing in mind, you have a probationary period to prove your worth. And at the end of that probationary period, you're going to be confirmed or denied continuing in that position. So you want to ensure that you are consistent with whatever it is that you sell and they bought. Bear in mind that they can return it. There's a 90-day turnaround time. There's a 90-day return policy. So it's either they're going to keep the product or they're going to return it to the sender. So you want to ensure that whatever it is that you're selling is consistent right throughout your time being with that organization. So, it's a lot of things that you would have learned through your years, studying, think about them and think about how you can, use them to add value to your growth and your development, whichever way, life takes you, but don't take them for granted. You are going through these things for a reason. Trust the process. Know that you are worthy of it. I know a young lady would have said that, you might sound a little bit discouraged because you would have sent out a lot of resume. But, with these pointers that are very competent and able panelists would have given you today, use those pointers and see what changes you can make to your resume so that, and networking is very important. It is one of the key things of getting to where you want to go in life is to know the who's who and the what. And it will definitely get you. And like, Dr. Ashley would have said something very profound. It comes with the simple of things, being humble. Don't think that you are above anybody or any position or beneath anybody or any position. Everybody have their role to play.
Yes.
And that's the important thing. Even in life, everybody have their role to play, and everybody serve their purpose. The important thing for you is to know where your purpose lies and go with that, and stand resolute in that belief that that is your purpose and that is what you're doing. So, don't be discouraged. Just think on what he can do differently. And real and come again, as we would say in Jamaica. But it's the drive that will keep you going. And just be humble about the process and trust it. What's yours will be yours.
Just to add, so those are very good points there, Yutan. And so you got a lot of tips on how to really improve your resume. And I mean, you really in this world, you have to really be creating a standout brand. That's really what's going to separate you from everybody else. And just remember, you have a lot of information at your disposal and you have a lot more avenues for job opportunities. So sometimes too, based on the resumes you receive, it's almost like we get the need for a job, but sometimes it's also important for you to know what direction you want to go in so you can be more targeted. As well as while you are looking, like I said, there are a lot of online opportunities now that instead of just sticking to the traditional methods, you can probably start there while you look. You think about short programs online that you can do based on your area of study to upskill so you have that information. And like I said, maybe you can find an online role right now that will help you with certain skills, and you can do that in the meantime so as to build that resume as you go along. So yeah, that was that.
Oh, very, very, very well said. Again, while all of the panelists were speaking, I've been here jotting down points. And honestly, out of this, I've actually even jotted down ideas for other topics that I would want to look at in employment empowerment. So very well said from all of the panelists here, and even to Ms. Bignalkov, who had to leave early. As we wrap up, I'm just gonna throw out one last opportunity for any of the students here who have questions. And if there are no further questions, then I would just go ahead and wrap up. So I'm just gonna linger around for 1-2 minutes. If any students have any questions, feel free to voice them. If not, then we'll be wrapping up.
Matthew, just one point before you, is there a question before I jump in?
Well, I'm just, I just throw out the opportunity for anyone to, I see a comment here in the chat. Oh, this was Shanoya. She says, thank you very much for all the inputs. I appreciate this session and all the panel members. Thank you to Shanoya, and please indicate that in your feedback. Thank you. So I'm guessing no questions are forthcoming, so you can go ahead with your point, and then we can probably wrap up after.
Well, I'm not sure if the person from the School of Engineering is here. And I mean, so I would say, Yutan, you mentioned networking, and it's something that my boss always says in terms of opportunities really come through people. And if it is that you have a particular interest, then you need to really get involved in that space. And there's so many different avenues to do that. So yes, it might not start with you necessarily getting a job, but if you're looking to get into the engineering space, then you need to be where the engineers are. So that is finding those groups and being a part of it, being engaging, because you never know who you might meet that maybe you could do some internship with, and that could be your next step into the profession. And there's so many people out there looking for persons to really coach and mentor, because that somehow is a fulfilling factor for people at this point. So just put yourself out there more, let people know what you are interested in, and you never know what can happen based on people you put yourself out there to meet.
So I'm going to say this because I can say the I firmly, because this is something that I believe in. Don't be one-dimensional. And I can say this without apology, because all the members of the panel are not one-dimensional.
That is so true.
Many different background, and that's how you add, add value to whatever area it is that you want to take on as a career path. Doesn't mean because you're studying this you can't go into another area. But it will add value to where it is that you need to be. The world is not one-dimensional. I remember, going on a trip. We're at 2G in Jamaica or 3G. Yeah. Other countries are at 5D, and 5G. So, it's important to add value to your experience. Everything that you can come across, and there's so many things they can do online these days for free. And then that when you're writing your essays and all that in school, you can draw on so many different experiences to that essay that will really cause your lecturer to be like, okay. But it's all about growth. Life is about continuous learning. Learn as much as you can throughout this journey in life. There is no limitation to it. Just every opportunity that presents itself, take full advantage of it. You never know what it might lead to. And like Anisha said, if you want to go in a particular route, for example, engineering, what are the engineers doing? You have to go where they are and see what is happening there. Because if you stay amongst the HR people and HR is not your thing, guess what? You're not going to be really happy. So you have to go where your passion lies and ensure that you're in the right network along those people.
One quick
right, and just to add, oh sorry.
That's what
I'll let you go first. I just wanted to add, which is right. I'm agreeing with you, Ton, that a career is not just a job, right? It's really a lifelong process. You have to explore, So just don't think that, well, I'm stuck in this job and that's it for me. Explore, learn new things. It's a lifelong process, and enjoy the ride, So don't feel like you are so confined in this particular job at this point, and I have to stay in this job because this is what I studied for, and this is what I'm, So just explore. It's all about your career. The path that you choose can go in different directions, right? So just bear that in mind. Your career is actually a lifelong process. Yeah, it's my take on that.
I was just gonna just to follow on the idea of, Anissa and Yutan have said that if you want to go into engineering, you need to be in that space. Sometimes we think the term engineering that, we need to maybe join an association or wherever they go. But then where else are engineers? Are they in project management? Are they doing is sustainability, in climate change? So you need to expose yourself and just don't move yourself outside of that one traditional box. So when you think engineering, and you say, well, you're going to network, sometimes that opportunity comes out of the most odd places. The most odd places are where you're going to find that diamond in the rough.
So true there. So true there. All right. So, right. So students, any other questions? Any other comments as we wrap up? All right. So I'm just giving a minute, just a minute for any students who want to ask any questions. And if there are no questions, we shall be wrapping up. Okay, so no one's forthcoming. No takers? Looks like the line ain't biting. All right, well, we have tarried for long enough, longer than I anticipated. But nonetheless, the discussion has been wonderful. It's been fruitful. It's been riveting. It's been energizing. It's been, wow, I just love the synergy. I love the energy of this panel. God willing, all being well, I'm hoping to repeat this panel again because this has been wonderful and so insightful. Honestly, honestly, my eyes have been opened. Same like Miss Big Now Kofu was here earlier. My eyes have been opened because trust me, I am just what going 3 years into the working world officially now, and trust me, from this forum alone, I have learned a lot. My eyes have been opened, and my goodness, there's just so much more to learn, for sure. So, given that there are no questions coming, all right, I'm just going to give my closing remarks, and we are just going to sign out for today. So I want to thank all of my panelists for being here. Thank you to Mr. Vassal and Mrs. Smith, who are past panelists. Thank you too for coming in. Thank you, Mrs. Smith,
Thank you.
for the moment that you jumped in, even though you said that you were going to observe. Your feedback and your input was greatly appreciated and really added to the discussions as well, particularly when you talked about the public and private sector and, you know, all those perspectives that you brought, you know, really added to the wealth of discussion that we had. Right, so thank you and Mr. Vassal for returning on this panel. And thank you also to my new panelists, Dr. Ashley, who is no stranger to UTech, Miss Anderson, who is just always vibesy, always passionate. She and I go to the same church, so you realize the energy between us. And this, thank you, Miss Brimming, as I would call her. I'm playing on her name there. Miss Bignall from NCU, who was with us earlier. Unfortunately, she had to leave. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. Miss Anderson, Dr. Ashley, Mr. Vassal, Miss Bremer, Mrs. Smith, thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules. You know, you all could have been elsewhere. You all could have been doing some interviews. You guys could have been in a meeting. You could have been in a board meeting. You could have been doing a presentation. You could have been doing some appraisals or some other HR related things or some other managerial things, but you guys have saw it fit to come and to impart to our young people, our generation that is coming. And of course, lastly, thank you to all of the students who have endured this near 3-hour discussion, full of information, full of perspective, full of vibes, because we got some points where we just couldn't help, as Francisca said, cracking up, right? So thank you to each and every one of you who came on, who signed on, who logged on. Thanks to those who left their feedback. Thanks to those who came with their questions. Overall, I am just very thankful and very grateful that this was able to happen for the second time around. God willing, as I said, I'm hoping we can do this again. So panelists, you may hear from me again. I'm gonna give you guys at least a month, 2 months before I may oblige or engage you guys again. So you guys will definitely be hearing from me very soon. But yes, it's now 5 minutes to the hour, so I'm wrapping up. Oh my, what more to say than to just say thank you to you panelists. And since we have about 5 minutes to the hour, I'm just gonna give you guys a moment to just give me and give the students here your final thoughts, final comments, final points, and then we'll just sign out and call it a afternoon or an evening.
I just so enjoyed this moment with the students and my esteemed panelists. It was such a pleasure meeting you all. I hope I see you in person and remember the faces.
Yes.
It has been a pleasure. Although I see you all laughing at me, I'm not sure if it's laughing with me or at me.
We're laughing with you, Miss Anderson.
With you.
And as I indicated in the introductions, you, Dr. Ashley, and Anissa are on the advisory panel. So you guys may have possibly crossed paths in
Yes,
in
yes.
some of the meetings, even though we are now in the virtual space. But for at least the first two meetings that we had that were face to face, the November one where I was absent, and then the January one, those two first meetings we had were face to face. So possibly you guys may had touch base face to face at least. But all of the other meetings we've had after that were virtual. So you guys you three particularly won't be too familiar strangers to each other.
Right. So it was my pleasure, indeed a pleasure. And I just want to tell our students to keep motivated. The fact of the matter, we are living in a space that can be based on the news and based on all the happenings that is taking place around us. Some of the things we have to be mindful not to absorb in our system and to get demotivated or to get too anxious. Remember all the various protocols, the mask wearing, the socializing, the hand washing, etc. But one thing, do not let your dream die. Keep dreaming, keep believing, keep pressing, keep pushing. You have potential. You are going places. What the mind think is what you become. And so think positive, be among persons who are on the go or on the move in a positive direction. Not that we are blinded about what is happening with us, but at the same time, the perspective that you take, I always say to my team, you are looking at the glass half empty, at all times. What about the part that is half full? Concentrate on that until we get better. So all the best to not just the student, but my panelists, to you, Mr. Francis. I wish you all the best. I pray for you for the best and nothing but the best.
Thank you, and same to you, Ms. Anderson. I'm very glad that you highlighted the point of positivity. And that is something that we can take with all of us, not only just in our day-to-day lives, but even in the interview space. I think it possibly may have been mentioned earlier on in the discussions. And I can recall you highlighting it in your presentation last week to say, highlight the positives. Look at the positives once you go into the interview. Of course, without it being said, the interview is that main point of contact where you sell yourself to the interviewer face to face. Whilst your resume will go before you as the quote unquote first impression, as I would call it, once you're in that interview, that's the ultimate do or die, or as someone would say, do the do. So thank you for that, Ms. Anderson.
I guess I'll go next. It was indeed a pleasure being here. I really enjoyed sharing, and I hope the students that are here really got some very important takeaways. And while I'm at it, I do sales recruiting, and as Yutan said, you don't want to be linear. You don't want to keep yourself boxed in. There are other opportunities out there. And really, if I'll just take the other minute to sell sales, the profession, is that if it is that you don't want something that's mundane, repetitive, if you want to really build a stronger version of yourself daily, because that is sort of what it requires. And if you are open and just be like giving sales an opportunity, then you can go ahead and apply for any other positions that we have.
All right. you got it in, Anissa.
I will also add, the first step is a 45-minute assessment, and you can show your level of commitment to really seeing if you have what it takes by taking that time to really complete. All right, and it will also, experience is not a factor of you passing or failing. Go ahead.
Okay, fair enough. That sounds like one of those call center psychometric assessments, and I'm sure a lot of people dread them. But let me not damper anything that you just said a while ago, Anissa. As you said, it's good to
a psychometric test. It is a specific test. So we're measuring self-competencies only.
Okay, got you. Okay, I just learned there, folks.
I think for me, in closing, I actually added 2 things, Uton, I stole from you. I literally was writing the email while I was on. I like passion and purpose. Those
Yes.
resonate very deeply with me. Passion and purpose. Can you imagine you add that, the humility and the confidence?
And you.
That sounds like the ideal case. Case with a K, case with a C that we're looking for.
Yes.
So we not only want the case with the C or the K, but we also want that I believe, who said it earlier, the natural talent, that raw personality, that raw edge, that is you. So
because
yes, continue, Dr. Ashley.
That is going to keep them going and keep that positive attitude regardless of what's happening on that job. I do want to encourage the students to remember that even though times are changing, trends change, a lot of the people who are in HR, a lot of the people who own businesses or who are going to interview or hire you are a little older. And so you must be very, very aware of what they consider as the standard when you're doing your resume, when you come into that job interview, and all those other tips. But it's very important that you keep that in mind as well. And as you go along, celebrate your small wins. You have big dreams and big goals, and you will achieve them. Baby steps, one step at a time towards success.
Very, very well said and very resolute there, Dr. Ashley. Mrs. Smith, any last 2 cents from you?
All the best. I know UTech would have delivered on what it's supposed to do. So go out there and shine. You can do it. Okay, to add to what everybody else has said, you can do it. All right.
That's right. All right. And with nothing more said, we have come to the end of a very exciting, insightful, mouthful, knowledgeful, riveting panel discussion. So this was Inside the Recruiter's Mind with our panelists, Dr. Charlene Ashley, Mrs. Jacqueline Smith, Mr. Uton Vassell, Ms. Anicia Bremo, Ms. Francisca Anderson. This was fun, and I look forward to having and staging another one of this with all of you back. And thank you again to the students who signed on, who logged on, who left their feedback and their comments. Thank you. This session, of course, will be posted on our YouTube page. I actually tried out the streaming part of Zoom for the first time today. So I think a few persons on YouTube would have been watching as well. So thanks to those who managed to catch the link and watch or caught a part of this discussion. But of course, otherwise, this recording will be posted on our YouTube page where you can watch, rewatch over and over. So we are well spent for this evening. This was fun, and I look forward to having this kind of session again. Thank you again to my panelists. God bless you all. God bless the students. All the best to you guys. And yes, go with God. Be at peace with yourself and bring yourself always. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.